I have power. All right. Well, um, welcome everybody. This is my first time hosting this, so yay. Welcome to our site monthly webinar. We are very excited about this month's topic, AI. It's great. You can use it for training and a whole lot more than making people into cartoons, which is what I've been using it for lately. Let me share my screen with some stuff. Uh-oh, Craig's on the call. He's going to laugh at me. Okay. So we got today's webinar, but I also want to let y'all know about some upcoming webinars we've got. If you don't know, we're having a conference in April, and we are so excited about it. In March, we're going to have a little sneak peek. There's a typo on my slide. A sneak peek at the conference. And if you can't join us in April, we're going to review it and find out what we missed. And yeah, okay, let's get off the slide. Okay. We also have, Site is an amazing organization. I'm so thankful I found it. If you're not a member and you're thinking about becoming a member, I really want you guys to consider it. Reach out to us if you have some questions. We do offer a free monthly webinar, but we also have our Train the Trainer program. We have a monthly a newsletter. Active on social media. We've got so many great things, and you get to meet new people and learn things and network and advance your careers in ways you didn't even realize that was possible. Today, we're talking about AI and training. The future is here. Are you ready? It is a panel discussion with Vicki and Lydia and Jen. And I am going to turn it over to Jen and let y'all introduce yourselves and get started. Maybe. Yes.
Oh no, Ruth, you
Jen's
froze.
frozen. Oh, there she is. Okay.
So I thought you were frozen. Come to find out, I was frozen. So at any rate, I would like to thank Vicki Oatway and Lydia Powell for joining me today, because we were talking right before the class started, or the webinar started, about how AI seems to be everywhere. We read the articles, there's classes, everyone's talking about it, it's all in your chat bots, but we get very little information about how to actually utilize it and how it can actually make our jobs easier. So that's what we wanted to bring to you today. So I want to start by getting Lydia and Vicki to introduce themselves, and I will start with Lydia.
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me to participate. AI is definitely on my radar. I'm Lydia Powell. I work for West Bend Insurance. I'm a commercial enterprise training specialist. So I work foundationally with our commercial underwriting teams, and then expanding, really provide kind of a holistic technical curriculum and soft skills trainings across the organization. So that's me. And then I'll pass that on to Vicki.
Well, thank you everyone for inviting me. I'm excited to get to speak on AI today, because I fully agree that it's a topic that we're hearing so much about, but we never really get a chance to talk about with our own colleagues and peers within the industry. So this is wonderful that this is being hosted today. I am with Federated Insurance. I'm a learning and development trainer. I specialize in career training and development for the general employee population base, providing them soft skills and development skills that they can use to grow their own careers. Jen, I'll turn it back to you.
Very cool. And you all know me. I am Jen Brockwell. Before now, I was a contract freelance CE instructor working mainly with AD Banker and Company. And I am going to go ahead and announce publicly that I am the newest member of the Institutes. I was I am going to be starting in March a full-time webinar instructor and content design. What will I be doing? I will be contributing to their content design and hopefully just to the overall well-being of everyone's life and being a general nuisance for anyone that will listen. So yeah, I am super excited. And I reached out to Sandy the other day and I was like, I don't know if it's official because we're waiting for my background check to come back. And I'm pretty sure I've led a pretty boring life here. And we're going to be coworkers. So yeah, at any rate, I am super excited about that. And so I do have experience using AI with, trying to make my writing more succinct or trying to find different ways to word things. In one of Lydia's emails, she used this term agonizing over learning objectives. And I thought that is so yes, that is the very perfect way to put that. And AI can help you end that agonizing process. So I am going to start first with Lydia. You were saying that you use one of the first ways that you use AI is analysis, using it as a thought partner in brainstorming. Elaborate on that just a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, when we think about the instructional design, like the foundational ADDIE process, I really try to take it to my generative AI partners. Specifically, Copilot is the one that we've kind of marked right now for our internal use at West Bend. But I describe to the bot who my audience is and what I'm desiring them to do knowledge, skills, abilities wise coming out of a training, and kind of see what it can pull from the internet at large in terms of training methodologies and activities to stop things from being so lecture style. I think the easiest type of training to fall back on is one way lecture, 60 minutes, give me the content and go. But coming out, especially I think of the pandemic and with the intergenerational workforce that we have, this interactivity that we need to have with these hybrid classes just continues to grow. And there are a lot of ideas out there, and generative AI can aggregate those for you in a way that makes you not have to do static internet searches painfully one by one by one to kind of pull some of that content to you.
I like that. Vicki, have you had any experience using either ChatGPT, Copilot, or any of that for the brainstorming part of things?
I have used it before in the past for the brainstorming when I've gotten stuck, or when I think I've thought of everything possible and I'm wondering if there's something else more out there, I'll use it for that process. The main area where I like using it is to become more efficient in my role with things that I know that I'm not good at. I know when it comes to that fine-tuned editing that I'm not an English teacher. That's just not me. I can talk great and I can do all these wonderful things, but putting my nouns and pronouns and adjectives so it's as clear as possible and concise, that's where I struggle. So I love using it as an editing tool for that final edit of my materials. Is it clear? Is it concise? And if I feel like I've gotten too wordy, throw me an idea for an activity as to how I can bring this home to facilitate a conversation with my participants that I'm training something to. So I use it more in that capacity than anything else, because for me, it's a tool to make myself better at my role.
You know, Jen, you brought up earlier when you were in this interview process with the institutes that they asked you like what your worst habit was. And mine is being overly wordy. And so I will echo that, Vicki. ChatGPT and Copilot and all of like the authoring tools just providing it some context and helping it to, I'm always using the word concise. Help me make this more concise. Like, help me pull words out and use the right ones. And it's not always great. You can't trust on it to rewrite. It's not going to think for you, but it's going to get you a better template to modify from than maybe you would have structured on your own, especially with long emails. The whole adage, bluff, bottom line up front, terrible at that, but I can tell ChatGPT or Copilot to bluff for me in my communication, and it'll actually outline all of my bullet points and give me a summary that I can put at the top so that people don't TLDR my emails, you know?
Yep. Let me ask you super quick. Greg Golson has a question. How do we apply AI to 70-20-10 training? And I have to admit, what is 70-20-10 training?
So I believe it, Greg, is it when you're spending 70% of your time doing the activities, 20% in kind of a more mentor-based, and then 10%, is that what you're referring to? Formal learning?
Yeah. Here, Ruth just put it in straightforward in the chat for us. Our moderator is on the ball.
I think it's great for this because sometimes I run out of ideas, because sometimes the easiest thing to say, especially with the 20%, is just stick them with the mentor. Well, how do you make the time that they spend with the mentor a meaningful use of their time based on the knowledge, skills, and abilities that you want them to gain from that? Like, what are you trying to glean from the time that they're spending with the mentor? And how do you articulate that? Again, kind of going back to the communication side, how do you make that clear to a mentor? I mean, we have had a host of different mentor templates for emails and spreadsheets and all of those things, but really highlighting what you want them to do and how the AI, again, not replacing the thought behind it, but it can kind of catalyze that a bit.
Lydia, I'm going to piggyback off of that because it's also a great way to timestamp or fit all your content into a specific time frame. So I'm also very wordy, and I can write 12 hours of content for a 1-hour session, but I know that that's not realistic. So by using AI, I can pare it back, or I can have it provide me parameters of, if I want to spend 5 minutes on this topic, what would that look like? And it helps me break out that time segment so I can have a really good balance when I am facilitating a session.
I've also used it to try to help with longer cadences, with longer learning sprints, like breaking out like when I should add more content to like a learning sprint, when to start the next sprint, like what activities I could add in intermittently to reinforce the single idea that I want them to practice during a learning sprint behavior, which kind of goes back to the 70-20-10, you know, focusing on a single principle. They have time to practice with a mentor and then go do. How do I keep that time where they're on that 70% interesting and engaging, and having them feel like they're growing, even though I'm just having them practice what we've already taught.
That's great. So Greg started a thread. What are tips to get great information without adding proprietary information into a prompt? So before you answer that, Susan came in after that and said, do your companies have AI policies? And then Scott came in and said, to follow up on Greg's question, has anyone had experience with DeepSeek, and what are your assessments of their data security policies? So before we even get to DeepSeek, the whole thread here is, how do we keep from inadvertently putting proprietary information into the prompt? Who wants to tackle that one? Vicki.
This is an area where I'm very passionate about. Our company has set standards out there for us as far as security and has done its due diligence. We do use Copilot internally. And from watching and learning so much this year with all the companies that are doing webinars on AI, it's been really interesting to learn how not secure some apps are and how a paid version may have more security versus a non-paid version. So no matter which version you're using, it's really taking that responsibility of knowing what the security parameters are. And as far as when it comes to that proprietary information, every once in a while I'll get resources thrown at me and I'll wonder where it came from. So I will throw that information right into the AI that I'm using and say, is this proprietary information? Or I think this is from this author. How can I accredit that particular person's work? So it's taking that ownership as a business professional, because I know with AI comes great power and with that comes great responsibility of being aware and acknowledging that and working with that. And also being aware of the hallucinations that AI itself can throw back at me and checking my work to make sure that it is valid.
Like it. Scott, you have a question?
Yes, talking about the protection for proprietary information, one of the things that we do, we use ChatGPT primarily, ChatGPT 4.0 and also o1. But in the settings, when you are uploading a document for analysis or something along those lines, there is an option there to tell the system not to share your data with the large language model. Now, what we've discovered is we still get good results, but we're not allowing ChatGPT to harvest that information from us, and that keeps it proprietary. It keeps our proprietary information safer. One of the reasons I asked about DeepSeek is because DeepSeek, it's loaded locally on your computer and you can operate it offline. And so we got curious about it and we started, we sent some prompts to DeepSeek saying, hey, what do you do with our data? And the first was some generic, yeah, we use metadata and all that good stuff. And then we dug a little deeper and said, what about, you know, how do we protect proprietary information? And it locked up on us. It basically said, oh, I'm not going there. And so we're pretty skeptical of DeepSeek because we haven't been able to get assurances that it can effectively secure our data. You know, and that was an experience we had. And Greg, I don't know if that helps you with your question, but ChatGPT does offer that do not share option.
And Sandy just entered in chat and saying, we were just told not to use DeepSeek yet. Ruth says, I think DeepSeek is concerning because it's so new and coming out of China, and there are some issues about the moderation practices. Some of the models may be applying information in line with local regulations. Getting back, I know, Vicki, you said that your company does publish AI guidelines. How about you, Lydia?
Yeah, same. We have an AI policy. What's always challenging about an AI policy is because AI is a moving target, our policy is also a moving target. And so those things change. But I think it's important not to get caught up being fearful of the AI policy and just think about everything that we do to protect our organization's information already as a business partner. None of that is different because of AI. None of that is different. So the same protections that we would use in disseminating information via email or even in a social setting like this, I wouldn't be sharing West Bend's rules and rates with Vicki over at Federated. We're not going to be doing that. It's the same concept when using any sort of third-party tool. AI just feels so alive to us that it can be tempting to be a little fearful of it. I will say that I do get skeptical of anything that tells me with like a checkbox that it's going to keep my information private. You know, like ChatGPT saying that it will not utilize my information. You know, we all know that once you put something out on the internet, it's there for life in some form or another. There were recent privacy concerns, even with something like Facebook and the ownership of your photos, even when you've deleted them from your profile, having like an offline storage. That's no different than with AI. If the bot is processing your information in some capacity, regardless of whether they say that they're using it for training their large language models or not, I would still be a little cautious in maybe putting that information out there. I personally don't upload documents to the ChatGPT for analysis or Copilot for analysis, even though that's an internal tool, because I really don't trust that part of the process until my IT teams, who are way smarter about the nerd stuff than I am, are going to tell me that they are cool with it, and they definitely have not said that yet. So I think that, along with DeepSeek, you know, I that would be my main caution with it, is just like anything. You wouldn't leave proprietary documents out in public while you went to the bathroom. You'd secure them, right? Like, so don't put them out on the coffee table of the internet to potentially be picked up in some other form. So yeah, the AI policies are ever changing, but we don't need to be. I don't think we need to fear this. I think as trainers, especially, I think about in my role with underwriters, the technical role that our associates have in terms of critical analysis is, I wouldn't say being challenged, but it's being held under the light in a different way than it did 10 years ago. I mean, I started in the business 20 years ago and I had triplicate carbons. And that wasn't that long ago. And I, you know, one of my colleagues, she's retiring this year, 49 years at the organization, and she started with a typewriter, and we had an entire wing of one of our buildings that was just for paper file storage, right? And they would roll out the carts of underwriting renewals and plop them on your desk, and that's how you visibly saw that your workflow was going in and out, right? So this is another shift that we have to be prepared to teach. I listened to a podcast from the Association for Talent Development, and I really cling to this phrase. They said that first you have to treat AI as a toy. You have to get in and get comfortable at large in your casual personal life. And then AI becomes a tool that helps you do the activities of your job. And then it really can become a teammate. And I think, Vicki, you said that, like, you really have come to rely on AI as a way to shore up things that just really you don't are not in your wheelhouse, that you don't really, you know, that will always be a challenge to you. I have the same view of it. And as we as associations move towards a more AI centric culture, now you start getting into the internal bots for resource management that are held to be more secure, and working with that.
What about both of you have mentioned in conversations with me at one time or another about telling a story, using AI in terms of being creative. What are some of the prompts you use for that?
Vicki, do you want to start, or should I?
You go ahead, Lydia.
So, so since I do underwriting training and sales training, I recently, last year, I did a managing difficult conversations series for West Bend. You know, we all know that insurance rates have been so great the last few years, and explaining that backwards to your agency partners is fun. It's so fun. So I asked AI, specifically ChatGPT, I gave them a scenario. I have a commercial insurance policy that's going up 15%, that they've had no losses in the last 8 years. How can I explain this to an agent? And I gave them even the tone, right? Paint the picture, like set the whole scenario. I want this agent to be visibly upset. I want them to be angry. I don't want them to give in. And I've asked it to play that scenario out with me, so that like I could give it potential responses and it could really give me feedback on how it thought that someone would react to those things using the principles that it found through its large language model. And those are really fun activities. I think there's some really cool stuff. I've only ever used that in the chat form, but let's see, Tim Slade from the eLearning Design Academy recently posted a couple of videos about interviewing with ChatGPT and using their voice recognition and feedback model. And I can see there being some really cool stuff in the future with telling AI stories and having it give you that immediate feedback, and how we could potentially use it in training to create more interactive scenarios that are more meaningful and personal to the learners.
That's interesting that you bring up that verbal portion of it. I had the opportunity a few months ago to see Mia, which is that plugin for ChatGPT that brings that vocal recognition. And I was blown away and conflicted at the same time. I was blown away that I couldn't believe how real the voice sounded that was talking back with me. The person had demoed it as, I need to have a difficult conversation about this person's work habit. And I want them to be this type of personality. I would like to approach this as to how I would talk to them. And at the end, I would like you to give me feedback as to, did I approach it correctly for their type of personality and what they need to grow from the experience? And it went back and forth. And the way that it was able to respond, it was so realistic, and it just totally blew my mind away. And I'm like, wow, this is such a great tool for when you need to practice those difficult conversations. But at the same time, in my mind, I'm like, well, that's unfair to the employee because the employee didn't get to prep for that meeting in the same way. So are we really coming into that meeting and that conversation at an equal level? Or it was a weird feeling, because how can you be so conflicted on one hand, but so amazed and in awe in the other? And that's the only time that I've seen it, but it was truly amazing. And I know so many of the other formats out there are moving to that as well. Within Copilot, prompts are, it's not just Copilots, any of them, prompts are really important. The more detailed you are, the more you define the role, how you would like it to behave, or the type of response you would like it to give, is really key. I like to compare as writing prompts as writing a SMART goal or writing good objectives. The better it is, the more you'll get out of it. And I have taken it even to within Copilot to get clip art. So if I can't find the right piece of clip art for a presentation, I'll say, provide me a picture of a person sitting at a desk in a professional office working at their computer. And then it'll take a few seconds and it'll generate a picture. Can you put a cup of coffee on the desk? And it'll add details or subtract details based off of that. With using the prompts and with using Copilot, I've used ChatGPT, I've played around with Claude, I have found that if you can use really good prompts up at the front, and if you ask the questions, you'll have more control over the response that you get back. Because if you go in weak, it's going to ask you responses, and then it might move you unnecessarily in a bias one way or the other without you even realizing it. So it really comes down to those prompts.
Yeah, the prompt engineering, that's a top of mind discussion. I think the fact that we use the term prompt engineering, how many before AI, how often did you ever think of using the term prompt engineering? That has never come up in my life for in casual conversation, or the word iterate. I have said the word iterate more in the last 6 months than I have in the entirety of my career. And yet these are really foundational principles when it comes to using AI effectively, because the difference between a Google chat and sending in a single word phrase and expecting everything to come at you from a single prompt, that's not what we're doing. We're having a conversation. This is built on a conversational speech model. So it's just not going to work that way. Just like I can't just come to Jen and say coffee and have her know exactly in what context I need. Do I need more coffee? Have I had too much coffee? Am I out of coffee? I have to give her more of a description and then tell her what I want to do with that information and how she can really help me. So it goes back to the teammate principle. If I'm really treating this like a teammate, I have to help it, give it context to collaborate and solve problems with me, instead of assuming that a couple words are going to get it from the beginning. They aren't. Something else I will say when it comes to using a GPT of any kind, keep your conversations with it to a single subject and start new subjects. That is huge, because that will cut down on bias and hallucinations, because what's happening at the bottom each time you're asking a new question, if you just keep the same chat open and then you're asking a new question and asking a new unrelated question and asking a new unrelated question, is the large language model is going back through the entirety of that chat, reading it and saying, what contextually have I already given you? And then how can I add into that? So if you really want to be sharp with the subjects, start new chats for each question or each conversation that you're having.
I'm going to stop you right there. First off, Greg, I have not forgotten your question in chat about crediting your work and that sort of thing, because we are going to cover AI ethics here in just a moment. But, this brings me to, I had a speaking engagement in Arizona a while back talking about the use of AI in human resources. And I was on a panel with an employment attorney and an AI software developer for human resources and that kind of thing. And we were talking about the fact that it all comes back to language. Language is what gets us into trouble. Language is, insurance is nothing but interpreting language, the contract, the policy, how we sell it, how we explain it, and it's everything that we do. And as you know, when we get into trouble with other people, it's because we're using a certain tone or, your body language, your verbal language, whatever, and we think we're conveying this one thing, and and the person is not receiving it that way. And so your AI prompts are the same way. And Mike reminded me of a funny story. When I had to do my bio for the first webinar that I delivered, I was very uncomfortable with this. So I went out to ChatGPT and I was like, all right, here's what I've done. Help me write this bio. And I didn't like it. And I said, make the language more flowery.
Only imagine.
When I said more flowery, it took my history and said, when Jen spread her wing from the boughs of Federated Mutual and landed in the garden of National Grange, and the sun came out and the birds started chirping, and when she blossomed into Allstate, and I'm like, oh no, oh no. And it was the perfect example of how you use a word a certain way. And Lydia, when you use a word a certain way, you know, you think, oh, everyone will hear it this way. And a lot of times AI will kind of throw it back in your face, like, no, not everyone hears it that way. And it's a really wonderful episode example. Greg's like, you asked for it, you got it. Oh, I certainly did. And I saved it too, because that was
Awesome.
yeah, absolutely. So you know, prompting is the secret sauce, and it's something that you have to play with, and it will really force you to be more Sandy says, I said flowery, not flower-like. But it will force you to be more specific and to really hone in on what it is you want, because as trainers, sometimes we're not, you know, when you're trying to, you know, I'm going back to that word agonizing again, but when you're really brainstorming and you're trying to figure out, you know, what is the message that we want people to get out of this? And, you know, you've already, Lydia and Vicky both, you touched on this in terms of, you know, we have a lot to deliver in a little bit of time. And it forces you to set priorities, and it forces you to be very specific. And it can allow, it's a nice tool to allow you to get to that aha moment that hopefully you want to convey to everyone else too. So I'm going to go back to Vicky super quick. You were talking earlier with me about, hang on, where were we? We were talking about prompt literacy. And what are some suggestions that you have for folks as you really start getting into this exercise of prompting?
It's having a set of rules that work for your role. Different roles require different prompts, experimenting with what works, and recording what works, and making a cheat sheet for yourself. And one tip that I picked up out of a webinar was when you put your prompts in, to either number them or use a hashtag or some type of indicator, because then if you need to go back and do an edit to that particular prompt, it's a lot easier to find. And if you're always using the same format, it makes it a lot easier too, because then it becomes more like a formula, let's say, your own personal formula to get certain results. And it's learning the buzzwords of the system itself. The one day with Copilot, I typed in and I said, what are prompts I should use? And it gave me just a generic list of, well, here's how you do good prompt writing. And a month later, you ask it again, and you can see how it's developed over time based off of how you have reacted with it.
That's great. Scott is asking, who has experience with prompt creator tools and templates?
I've done a little bit of messing around with creating custom GPTs. I don't love them. I'll be honest. I prefer keeping the language model open without trying to super refine it. In terms of creator tools, so we've recently started working on a resource bot internally, generative AI resource bot. And we decided to give general prompting guidance, 5 key areas, very, very general, without creating, you know, what everybody wants you to do is say, give me the magic words, the open sesame that is going to give me the perfect result that I'm looking for every single time. And the danger that you run into with some thinking like that is that because it is generative AI, it is a GPT, it is always learning, that is a moving target. So there will never be a time that a static list of prompts will always even get you the same answer that it did before. You know, without going into too much detail, we had a QA model of our internal bot, and I asked it a question about waivers of subrogation. And it gave me one answer, and it gave me the 2 references that I was looking at. And then we went into the next environment with the tool. I asked the same question, expecting it to give me identical results. and it dropped several of the resources, all because the nature of my question changed. It was wider context based before, and now it's narrower. And so that can happen with these large language models that we have for these open source AI as well, that the developers can decide at any moment to tweak those things. So I wouldn't, me personally, I don't get caught up too much in prompt engineering because I'm just talking to it. I'm just talking to it. And, you know, we think that that's taking us longer to get to the same result, and it's not. If we really do the math on how long it would take us to compile all these resources by ourselves, rather than asking maybe a series of 5 minutes worth of questions to a GPT to help reference library us and send us down a narrower but like the correct path, it's doing those things. So I don't spend a lot of time on that.
And I'm going to add here, you do have to be very careful and audit your results. Lydia and Vicky both mentioned bias and hallucinations. I don't know if you guys heard about the 3 attorneys, the stories that I know offhand. One was in Massachusetts and 2 were in Florida that used ChatGPT to come up with case law for their arguments in court, and it was a complete hallucination. None of them were correct. So you do have to be careful. There is one that's better for research. It's called Perplexity. There are others that are just language models. You have to use the tool the way it was supposed to be used. And ChatGPT is not really the place you go for specific research on certain topics like case law. So one of the things, you know, you mentioned earlier, documenting what you're doing. And we preach that. How many times do we preach that to underwriters, claims adjusters, salespeople? You document what you're doing. And I think that's very important with AI as well. Yep, Greg says, just a tool. Don't trust, always verify if you're working on facts. But you have to verify the language too. You know, I've used ChatGPT 4 with my own resume. I take the job description and I say, take 10 words from this job description, make sure they appear in my resume. Well, if you're not looking at it, if you're not careful, at one point it made me this expert data analyst, and I'm like, oh no, oh goodness, no, not no.
It's very effusive, isn't it? It
yeah,
like it loves to like give you way more credit than you want to have about something.
Yes. Oh, yep. And Guy says certain courts have refused to accept pleadings that have been created using AI as a result of that. And that's a shame too, because as a language model, I could see where there would be certain very valid shortcuts on boilerplate documents. But again, you have to document what you're doing and you have to document where you get it. And this brings us back to the ethics of it. You know, we've kind of nibbled at the edges of it. Greg asked earlier, what do you do? Do you acknowledge? Oh, and by the way, I skipped a comment. Sorry about that. Scott says the NAIC has a model bulletin on the use of AI in insurance. Human validation is stressed very heavily in this bulletin. And it's just like treating it like a teammate. You know, we're going to audit our results no matter what we do. But how do you credit what has been created by AI, or do you? I don't.
Well, it depends on what it is, first and foremost. So it depends on whether I'm using the AI tool to generate my own ideas, and then I'm heavily modifying those ideas. If that's the case, then no, I seldom credit it. If I'm using it as a reference tool, and like, let's say that I'm using it during the design phase of a project, and I'm referencing like Bloom's taxonomy and like adult learning principles, and it spits out a bunch of learning principles for me, and it's like, yeah, you could use all these ideas. Then I force it to reference. It's like, where did you pull this from? where is this information coming from? Because I don't really want to reference the AI. I want to reference the original creator of the document or the design principle. So that's how I make sure that I reference the AI information that I pull from.
And I think Sandy just capped off your comment perfectly. Like, we shouldn't just put something out there that AI created, though, right? I wouldn't.
I went to either.
So one of our leaders in IT said something about our implementation of AI that I thought was very thoughtful. He said that as professionals, that we need to utilize this AI less as artificial intelligence and more augmented intelligence. We are still the intelligence. We cannot be replaced. It's helping us get past things that we could automate, but we are still the intelligence. So if we ever let it just regurgitate things for us and slap that out there, then that's really like, is that ethical? Absolutely not.
Right. Scott says, we are sentient, the machine is not. Sandy says, I don't believe that AI creates content. We are still the content developers. And Guy says, not yet. Open the pod bay doors, Hal. I can't do that, Dave. But it's like having a teammate that you can bug to say, I need to bounce some ideas off of you, and used as in that way as a tool. But even for research, Lydia, what you said about forcing it to reference, that's one of the things I love about using Perplexity for my research when I'm looking for, I was looking for learning resources, adult education resources, and Ehrman, Ebbinghaus theories, and just trying to find some things like that without having to actually go read the book, if you know what I mean. And Perplexity just gave me this list, and it was great because it gave me a bunch of different sources to go, but I still had to do the work. Susan says, I've heard AI referred to as your drunk intern.
Yeah, it's so true. It's a little hungover sometimes, but it shows up.
Oh my goodness, that is hysterical. And the one that you didn't have to report to HR.
Yeah.
So, but do you have some other examples of bias that you've seen with results, some of the things that you've asked AI to produce?
I've had it give me false numbers as far as pulling statistics, because I was doing a course on communication, and it spit out these amazing statistics on, oh, in the professional world, this happens X amount of time. And I can't remember the specific example. And I said, wow, where did you find that information? Oh, well, it sounded good, so I provided it. And I was like, oh, it didn't say it in that specifically. It said it in its own way, well, this sounded good to reinforce what was factual, so I provided it. And I'm like, wow, this is a great reminder to always, always make your work your own and check your facts and use multiple resources to check your facts, especially when it's that amazing magical number that it gives you and you're like, wow, that is the coolest thing. How come I've never heard that anywhere?
Well,
Because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Right. So we're back to trust but verify and getting multiple references. Greg says 67.4% of all statistics are made up. Thanks, Greg. Well, wasn't it Mark Twain that says there's lies, damn lies, and statistics?
yeah. Wasn't it an anchor man that said 50% of the time it works all the time or something like that? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I always just keep in mind with this that the internet is the the core source for all GPTs. And as we know, the internet is never wrong, wink. So we just have to keep that in mind. I found a Cornell study about bias in AI, and it said, it was talking about ad pushes that were being sent to people about job postings through AI, and that because of the data that it was pulling from on the back end, it was only pushing ads to certain genders and avoiding sending out like other genders, even though the hiring companies had requested equal opportunity. They didn't want that bias. So it's not perfect. It is a tool. We have to understand what its limitations are. I'd say that, frankly, we don't want to talk politics, but even as the political climate becomes more diverse and slightly divisive, that what gets put out there can also be skewed based on just the volume of information that's available, because AI loves large volumes of data to back it up.
And
so that may or may not be factual depending on what it's sourcing. So we have to push for sources.
Well, and just to add to what you just said, getting back to the fact that it is about language, and language can be very loaded. And Amazon had a case about 3 years ago where they had posted a job, and this might actually have been mentioned in that Cornell study, I think, but they posted a position, and the hiring people started looking at it and saying, why are all of our prospects only men? What is going on here? And so they had to go back and look at all the resumes that came in, and they did indeed have resumes from women. And they figured out that their AI software, their screening software, had developed a bias because it liked words like execute and capture and these very strong verbs that a lot of women don't use. And it took them a while to figure out what was going on. And to their credit, they actually published this before they got into trouble and said, oh my goodness, this is something that can happen with AI. And they stopped using it and they sent it back to the developer. And this is also why you have to really check. When we were talking in Arizona to this group of HR people, it's like, you really have to audit the results. Like, who are the prospects that your AI said it's screening? So it's kind of the same thing. We have to be very careful about the language that we use, because language does evolve, just like people evolve. Language can be loaded. It can be biased. It can say one thing to one person and the next person interprets it completely differently. So I think that that's the magic and the danger of these AI tools. And of course, now I'm stuck with two things. One is the drunk intern visual, and the other is a bumper sticker, Lydia, that I'm now going to have to make that says, don't leave your proprietary documents on the internet coffee table.
Nice.
My two takeaways.
It's such an exciting world out there with AI. I think about all of the learning and development things that I find tedious about my work that are made easier. I mean, I love the idea of learning objectives, but it's painful to craft them. I love the idea of really honing in on evaluation before I start a project, but then it's painful to tie them back to the learning objectives. And when I can put those two things together and have like a little bit of a synergy to like think about that from a template rather than having to go to the blank piece of paper, it's so great. Or, oh my God, guys, multiple choice wrong answers. Game changer. I hate writing multiple choice questions, and the wrong answers are the hardest part of a multiple choice question, aren't they? Because how many times can you answer a question wrong? But like that is it's a tiny thing. Like they're big picture things that like AI can help us do, but those small things are really, really where it shines right now. And those are a huge amount of lift for me in terms of time. And especially if you're a one-man band. I mean, I have a team, but a lot of the projects I lead, I'm the soup to nuts project manager, instructional design, delivery, facilitation, evaluation. Here's stakeholder, here's your data. And that's a lot. So like there's a lot of easy stuff that I can think about with a template in mind rather than a blank piece of paper. It's huge.
Love it. And Guy comes in and says, documenting process, etc. Scribe has been a godsend. So I've seen the ads for Scribe in terms of documenting processes. Has anyone else used that, or Guy, do you want to give us a quick?
Yeah, I can talk about it. So I'd seen it in the ads, like with Instagram and everything else. Basically, what it does is it's a plug-in to Chrome, it's a plug-in to whatever, that it watches what you do on your screen, and it registers every click you make, and then creates that in a step-by-step process that you can use generative AI to help explain the process, to help explain the steps and everything. We actually have an enterprise version of it that has been through our AI, through our IT and everything, that they've approved it. We have certain licenses. So that's why I've used it, is because we have access behind our VPN and everything else. I don't know that I would use it outside of it, just because, you know, I'm not scared of AI, but being careful with actually having it look at what I'm doing in our systems. So, for instance, I'm working on our internal for our claim system. We use obviously a third party claim system. And so I'm putting together a manual internally using Scribe. So like, how do you set a reserve? How do you edit information? How do you run a claim search? I can use Scribe to do all that because it's a step-by-step process. And I hit capture, Scribe watches it. You can even do voice narration while you're doing it. So you can narrate the step and it will transcribe what I narrate into the steps.
Amazing. So that is a service for which you pay, and your information is, your proprietary information stays within the organization.
Yeah, because they've done it on the enterprise side. We have the enterprise version of it. Mm-hmm.
Just checking.
Yeah, I've been gunning for one of those, Guy, like either Scribe or there's another one, Tango, that I've heard really good things about, but I haven't had the chance to explore yet. Like there's only so much that you can get your companies to pay for technology. It's so rude. But
it is. Well, it's funny. I didn't even ask for it. I was talking to one of our IT guys. He does a lot of he calls them one and dones, through videos of how to do various things. Like it can be about Outlook, it can be about Excel, etc. And so I met with him in my role to talk to him about the different things, and he was showing me what he used to do those videos, because I wanted to do some videos for the claims department and stuff. And while he was demonstrating, I saw a Scribe directory on his desktop. So I started asking him about it, and that's how the IT has been using Scribe. Our IT uses Scribe to document their processes, document calls and stuff like that, so that they're not creating the wheel every time. They're not having to write everything down. And so what he did is he just gave me one of their licenses. He kicked one of his teammates off and gave it to me.
Thank you for that. So we have a 3-minute warning before our webinar is done. And I get the feeling that we could do this for a whole other hour. So we're going to have to revisit this. Super quick, Vicki or Lydia, do you have anything that we might have missed?
I think for me, one of my things that I have been learning is, as much as I love AI, not everybody that I work with loves or has the same belief in AI. That part of my role is being a good steward of how I use it and helping those people across the bridge of how not to be afraid of it, that you can protect things, that you can use it correctly as a tool, because everyone hears all the horror stories and they get afraid of it and they're like, oh, we can't use AI, or oh, our work won't be original anymore. of helping them get through those thoughts themselves and just educating those around us with things like this. I mean, this has been wonderful. I've learned things that I wrote down. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to check into that. It's just spreading the knowledge so that we all get more familiar with it.
Vicki, that was so beautiful. Like, that's exactly how I feel about it too. It's really so much about change management. You know, we as educators in the insurance industry, we really have a passion for lifelong learning, all of us. And so in one of the meetings I had with my my IT team, I said, you know, as the business, like on the business side, like I need you to explain it back to me so that I can be excited about explaining it to other people. So we really are stewards and leaders in helping people get comfortable with what their jobs are going to be for the next 10, 15, 20 years as this continues to evolve. And, you know, change management is constant. There's no stopping anymore. So this AI process is just something that we have to get comfortable. The ocean isn't going to stop moving. We just have to keep our sea legs.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you being here and your time. And thank you to everyone who attended. And we'll see you next month. Hopefully we'll see you in Nashville.
Bye, guys.
Thank you guys.